Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 2 stories on why you should always look through the peephole before opening the door. If you like either of these stories, please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button on this video to give me your support. Now, enjoy your horror stories, but first, make sure all your doors are locked. A few years ago, I lived in a large apartment complex in the city. The building was 10 stories high, and my apartment was on the 8th floor. It was a bad area with a lot of crime. I was planning to move out soon, so I never bothered to get to know any of my neighbors. One Friday night, I came home from a hard day of work, and I was feeling very tired. I got into the elevator, I pushed the button for my floor. When the doors opened, there was a man standing there. He was dressed in a long overcoat, and his hat was pulled down low over his eyes. "Hello," I said, trying to be polite. The man didn't answer. As I got out of the elevator, he pushed past me roughly and got into the elevator and started pushing the buttons. "What a jerk," I muttered to myself. I unlocked my apartment door and went inside. I went straight to the bathroom. While I was washing my hands, I happened to glance in the mirror and noticed something strange. There was a dark red stain on the sleeve of my shirt. It looked like blood. Then, I remembered the rude guy who had bumped into me at the elevator. It made me feel sick. I didn't know where that blood was from, but I had my suspicions. I immediately locked my front door, and then I took a shower and threw the bloodstained shirt in the trash. I didn't sleep very well that night. The next day was a Saturday, and I had a date with an attractive girl. I was getting ready to leave when I heard my doorbell ring. "Who could that be?" I muttered in irritation. I was already late for my date, and I didn't want to waste more time. Peering through the peephole, I saw a policeman standing outside. "What is it?" I asked loudly through the door.
"I'm sorry to disturb you, sir," he said politely. "I wanted to ask you some questions. There was a murder last night in the apartment next door to yours."
I was late for my date. I didn't want to get involved. "Sorry, officer, I didn't see anything," I lied.
"But you may be able to help us,"
said the policeman.
"Did you see anybody suspicious? Can you at least open the door to talk?"
"I wasn't at home last night," I lied again. "Sorry, officer, I can't help you."
"All right, sir," the policeman responded. "Thank you for your time."
He walked off down the hallway, and I continued getting ready for my date. For the next few days, I felt very nervous. My next-door neighbor had been murdered. The neighborhood was really unsafe. I was glad I was moving out soon. I also felt very guilty about lying to the policeman. After all, I had seen the murderer, even though I hadn't seen his face. Perhaps there was something I could have told the police that would help them catch the killer. Sometimes crimes are solved by one little detail. One morning, before going to work, I was wondering if the police had managed to solve the case. I turned on the TV and watched the news, but they didn't mention anything about the murder. When I was leaving for work, I noticed a bad smell in the hallway. It seemed to be coming from the apartment next door to mine. I had a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I went to find the building manager, and I told him about the smell. When I mentioned the murder, he said there hadn't been any murder in the building. I convinced him to come back up to the floor. When he smelled the stench, he used his master key to open the neighbor's apartment. Both of us were horrified by what we found. My neighbor was on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. The smell was overpowering. He had been lying there for days. A 15-year-old girl named Donna lived with her father in a small house in the suburbs. Ever since her mother died, Donna had depended on her father for everything. They had a wonderful relationship and loved each other very much. One morning, Donna's father was leaving on a business trip. As they ate breakfast together, he told her that he would be home very late that night. With that, he kissed her on the forehead, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out the front door. Later that day, when Donna came home from school, she did some homework and watched some TV. By midnight, her father had still not returned, so she decided to go to bed. That night, she had a dream. She found herself standing at the edge of a busy highway. Cars and trucks whizzed by at an alarming rate. She looked across the highway and saw a familiar figure standing on the other side. It was her father. His hands were cupped around his mouth, and he seemed to be shouting something to her, but she couldn't make out what he was saying. As the traffic whizzed by, she strained to hear. Her father's eyes were sad. He seemed to be desperately trying to communicate something to her. She could barely make out the words. Don't open door. Suddenly, Donna was awoken from the dream by a strange tapping noise. Then somebody began to ring the doorbell downstairs. She scrambled out of bed and put on her slippers. Then, dressed only in her nightgown, she ran downstairs and went to the front door. Looking through the peephole, she saw her father's face outside. He was staring right at her. The doorbell kept ringing insistently. "Okay, hold on. I'm coming," she shouted. She pulled back the deadbolt and was about to unlatch the door when she stopped. She looked through the peephole at her father again. Something about his expression didn't look quite right. His eyes were wide open. He looked terrified. She slid the deadbolt back into place. "Dad!" she yelled through the door. "Did you forget your keys? Dad, answer me. Dad, please. I need you to answer me. Is there someone else out there with you? Why won't you answer me? I'm not opening the door until you say something." The doorbell kept ringing and ringing, but for some reason, her father refused to answer her desperate cries. For the rest of the night, the frightened girl cowered in a corner of the hallway, helplessly listening to the ceaseless ringing of the doorbell. It seemed to go on for hours. Eventually, she fell into an uneasy sleep. At dawn, she woke up and realized that everything was quiet. She crept over to the door and looked through the peephole again. Her father was still there, staring at her. She cautiously opened the door and was confronted by a sight that filled her with unimaginable horror. Her father's severed head was hanging from a nail above the door. There was a note attached to the doorbell in crude, scrawled handwriting. It read, "Clever girl." Did those stories scare you? Let me know in the comment section below. And stay safe out there.